Welcome to Salute Your Sports Week 30. Kamen Enchev, Drew Brackett, Tom Castleman, guys. We've got an exciting show today. We've got our NFL draft recap, a big week this week, May the 4th, Cinco de Mayo, and of course, the most important one of all, Drew Brackett's birthday.
So we'll be celebrating that among other things, a little bit of drama in the NFL post-draft, and LeBron James, the self-proclaimed king, returning to the NBA. How are things going to be shaking up in the Western Conference? We'll talk about that and more.
Well, obviously can't wait till my birthday on Thursday, but last week we had the NFL draft. 5 quarterbacks drafted in the top 15, including the top 3 picks. Guys, comment which quarterback enters the best situation?
Well, for me, I think the 2 quarterbacks that enter the worst situation, starting with that first, are Trevor Lawrence and Zach Wilson, the top 2 picks. You look at the Jaguars, a 1-win team, the Jets, a 2-win team. Neither team had good targets. The Jets were 31st out of 32 in passing. You take a look at Justin Fields with my hometown Chicago Bears. Justin Fields is probably somewhere in the middle. He has a good defense around him, a team that made the playoffs, albeit only because of COVID during that 8-8 season. But he does have Allen Robinson, a very good receiver there. Mac Jones, for me, probably the second best situation, given that he's going to the Patriots with Bill Belichick, that winning franchise. They were terrible at passing last season, but they did add Nelson Aguilar. They added Hunter Henry, a tight end, and they get a lot of guys back who opted out due to COVID on the defense. But the best situation is hands down the guy who I think is the worst quarterback. Trey Lance, to me, is the worst quarterback in that, he had only over 225 pass yards once in his FCS career. Some question marks about the competition, some question marks about the touch on his ball, but certainly a great arm, a great athlete, and he's got great players around him. The 49ers were just in the Super Bowl 2 years ago, and they have George Kittle, a fantastic tight end, someone who he can hit over the middle, wide open whenever he wants to. So for me, definitely have to give this one to Trey Lance.
Yeah, I agree with Trey Lance as well as being in the best situation, especially when you consider the coaching around him. Kyle Shanahan has a specific type of offense that he wants to run. San Francisco values the fullback like no other team does, with Kyle Juszczyk, I think it is on the in the backfield.
Juszczyk.
There we go. I'm struggling with my Eastern European pronunciations.
Well, as an Eastern European myself from Bulgaria, I got your back, Mr. Castleman.
It's a team effort on this show, to be sure. And Trey Lance comes from an offense that ran a lot of 2 running back formations, a lot of 2 running back, 2 tight end formations out of North Dakota State. More of a running offense, which is why his passing numbers weren't quite so high. So somebody who doesn't have a ton of experience, I believe only 16 or 17 starts at the 17 starts at the collegiate level, is drafted mostly on his traits, but I think being in this running style of offense, that might actually serve him really well, where he ends up in a situation where he performs better than a lot of us thought he would had he gone to just about any other team. Justin Fields, I think, is a close second. Matt Nagy had him, Matt Nagy was in Kansas City, had the quarterbacks in that fateful draft of Patrick Mahomes, generational talent, Deshaun Watson, a Pro Bowler, Mitchell Trubisky, interesting talents, but needs to put it all together. If Matt Nagy had that kind of input and that kind of insight on this draft, I could look for Justin Fields to be having a really, really big career, especially if he's running Matt Nagy's offense to perfection, something that we in Chicago, unfortunately, have seen glimpses of and little more.
Yeah, real quickly, we'll go to Drew in a second, but before we go to Drew, one thing that I did see that was a little ridiculous, I know the Bears are really bad at drafting quarterbacks, unfortunately, as basically you said, Tom, but I don't know who it was. Maybe it was Booger on the coverage. One of the analysts said, oh, well, he shouldn't draft Justin Fields because they went for a running quarterback with Mitchell Trubisky. Just because you failed with one quarterback who can supposedly dual threat doesn't mean that you shouldn't take a chance on another quarterback. So certainly a good pick for the Bears. Who do you think, Drew, has the best situation of these top 5 quarterbacks?
Yeah, probably as you mentioned, Trey Lance. He's got a great situation in San Francisco, as does Justin Fields. So we'll see how those work out. But moving on, Common, who was the steal of the draft?
Yeah, real quickly on Trey Lance, though, while he has the best situation, he may not be the starter. If Jimmy Garoppolo plays really well and stays healthy, he has actually the hardest time to start and the hardest time to start right away. As far as the steal of the draft, guys, I'm going to go with Devontae Smith. I know he was picked 10th overall. I know we're thinking of a lower pick, but for me, I talked about it last week on the show. He's got the best talent of any of these players. He's a guy who, to me, should have been second or third overall. I think he had almost 2,000 receiving yards last season. Led college football in yards, touchdowns, receptions, and we had 3 pass catchers get drafted ahead of him, despite playing in the same conference and putting up worse numbers. I think Devontae Smith is the next Marvin Harrison. Devontae Smith is going to put on that gold jacket and make the Hall of Fame. So the Eagles at number 10, landing a great pick. And the guy we just talked about at number 11, Justin Fields for the Bears, was the unanimous number 2 prospect heading into the draft, maybe a couple months ago, and all of a sudden he slips to number 11. The Bears getting great value with a guy who can run, a guy who can pass, a guy who makes smart decisions, the leader of the team, and really the best quarterback the Bears have ever drafted. I've got a few guys in the lower rounds, but first, who do you guys look at some steals in this draft?
Yeah, for me, I'm going to go somebody who fell into the second round on the defensive side of the football, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. A little bit undersized of an inside linebacker, but in today's NFL, that doesn't matter as much as it used to. When you need a 3-down linebacker, they need to be able to play pass coverage as well, if not better, than playing run defense. And the Cleveland Browns picked somebody up at a position of need on a side of the ball in need. What was the biggest complaint against the Cleveland Browns last year? They had a really good offense, but they couldn't stop anybody. Owusu-Koramoah will go a long way towards doing that for them. He has really good traits in terms of his athleticism and his speed. So the Browns, in a team in need, picking him up with, I believe, the 52nd pick. He was graded to be a first-round pick, mid to maybe late, slipping into the 20s, and fell all the way deep down into the second round. Great job for Cleveland, finding great value at a position of need.
Absolutely. Drew, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm going to go with Amari Rodgers. He was drafted in the 3rd round out of Clemson. He went to the Green Bay Packers, and you need some help for Aaron Rodgers or whoever the quarterback may be there. So he's a deep threat guy. He's explosive. He was explosive at Clemson, so great pick.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. If they made that move to get Aaron Rodgers to stay, we'll have more on that a little bit later in the show about Aaron Rodgers. A couple guys, deep round picks. I look at Chris Rumph out of the Chargers, 4th round, 118th overall. He's very agile, a great edge rusher, 8 sacks last season at Duke. He's improved during all his 3 years of college. He could be a good pickup to pair with Joey Bosa there. And I was about to say San Diego, but actually Los Angeles. Still not used to that several years later. Also, I like the Bears getting Jazz Newsome, a receiver out of UNC, in the 6th round, a great value pick. He had over 1,000 receiving yards his junior season. Maybe took a step back his senior season, but I think he's going to be a very solid number 2 behind Allen Robinson, a good slot receiver for Chicago, a good fit there, a guy that I look for in the later rounds.
Which team had the best draft?
Best draft, I'm going to have to go with a homer pick on this one. I'm going to go with the Chicago Bears. They didn't have a whole lot of volume, but they identified players at positions of great need on their team. Quarterback, of course, perhaps the greatest need for a franchise that has had that need for the longest time in getting Justin Fields. They were aggressive in trading up to get him. And then again in the second round, Tevin Jenkins falling, another player who had a first-round grade, if we're talking about steals of the draft. First-round graded player fell to 39. Bears moved up and got him. So with anytime you can come out of a draft with your starting quarterback of the future and potential left tackle of the future, I believe Jenkins might be taking that spot since they cut Charles Leno a little bit earlier today. If you can come away with those two positions, you've had a great draft to be sure.
Absolutely, and the key is getting value. As Tom said, two guys that were projected higher, going a little bit lower there for the Bears. Also, Jenkins, by the way, he played in college. He played all over the offensive line, so he's got a lot of depth. He can play at just about any offensive lineman position. They also got Larry Borum out of Mizzou, a guy I've interviewed, a guy I've seen play in the 5th round, and he was a 2nd or 3rd round lineman pick. And then obviously Tevin Newsome, the wide receiver I just talked about. So for me, Tom and I are going to be homers. We're going to go with the Bears. But I can't remember ever being more excited about a Bears draft. So I'm very happy with what Chicago did in the draft. I also did like the Miami Dolphins investing in their young quarterback Tua. They paired him with his former teammate Jalen Waddle. Also, they got a good offensive lineman, Liam Eichenberg out of Notre Dame, a guy who can be an immediate starter. Also picked up a couple other players on the offensive side of the ball. So Miami also doing a very good job in investing in its quarterback, which is what the Bears did with Justin Fields. They not only drafted him, but they drafted him lineman. They drafted him a receiver. So those two teams, I think, did very well in this draft.
Yeah, I agree. I think the Bears had a good draft overall, and then you look at the Browns and the Chargers, they had good drafts too. And as for worst draft, which team had the worst, Tom?
Well, I think it's easy to say a team like the Houston Texans had the worst draft, given they didn't have a pick in the 1st or the 2nd round. But as more and more details are coming out right before the draft, Green Bay Packers, I might have to give a failing grade to as well, given how Aaron Rodgers really, really wants out of Green Bay. Drew, I know you mentioned a sleeper pick for them, picking up a receiver in the 3rd round. Is that enough? Aaron Rodgers has only thrown a couple of touchdown passes, to a 1st round pick. Mercedes Lewis, a washed up at this point in his career tight end. So in terms of a failing grade from the holistic viewpoint of a franchise, maybe Green Bay Packers get a failing grade simply because they have not done enough to appease the most important player on their team. If any team in the franchise or in the NFL needs to make sure that their number one player is happy, it's got to be Green Bay.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll talk about Rodgers here in a second. I also agree with you. The Texans, they traded their 1st and 2nd round draft picks to, DeAndre Hopkins is gone, and so are their draft picks. A massive failure with the Texans there. The players they did draft weren't very good. Their 3rd round pick, receiver out of Michigan, Nico Mills, a guy that underachieved in college. He didn't even play last year because of the COVID opt-out. And the quarterback they did draft, in case Deshaun Watson leaves, out of Stanford there, Mills, he's a guy who never had 2,000 pass yards in a season, so he's very unproven. The Las Vegas Raiders, for me, were a big bomb. They really reached with Alex Leatherwood, the offensive lineman out of Alabama, taking him 17th overall. He was projected to be 34th overall. So really, they drafted him a whole round too soon, honestly. And I look at their names, the players they drafted. I don't recognize any of the names, and I'm a diehard college and NFL fan. The only name I recognize is Tyree Gillespie, former Mizzou safety that I covered his games when I was working in Columbia, Missouri as a TV sports reporter. So if that's the only name I recognize, good player, but you're in trouble. Certainly the Raiders did not do very well in this draft, John Gruden and company.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Seattle Seahawks. They only had 3 picks in the draft, so just not a lot of volume for them. Well, guys, any other draft storylines that stand out, Tom?
Yeah, for me, I like going for the human interest side of the draft stories. One, running back out of Kansas, of all places, Puka Williams going to the Bengals, a running back with no toes on his right foot, a lawnmower accident as a child just kind of cut him all off, and overcame that to have a successful high school, collegiate, and now is going to the pros, continuing on his career. So a great story there for him. And then Kwity Paye out of Michigan, was born in a refugee camp in Africa, moved to Rhode Island when he was a small child. His mom had to work multiple jobs to provide for him and the rest of the family, but still managed to see as many games as possible. That was part of the story, that she would trade shifts with people to make sure that she could go see her son play. And of course, with Mother's Day coming up, national TV is asked the question like, hey, what's next for you and the family? He says, well, my mom's retired. He made the decision for her. He's providing everything going forward. So that it's a great story for a young man and his family that endured so much to get to this point. A really happy story, and what the draft is really all about.
Storyline Castleman. He's always all about the storylines. Really good picks. Certainly, the storylines I'm going to pick can't beat what Tom Castleman just told us. Really neat stuff and really cool stuff. What I do find kind of fun, though, is all these guys reuniting with their former teammates. Devontae Smith being drafted by the Eagles. He's back with Jalen Hurts, the Alabama guys. And also Tua and Jalen Waddle back together in Miami, speaking to another quarterback, receiver, national championship guys over there at Alabama. Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow, national champions 2 years ago with LSU, back together with the Bengals. And then Travis Etienne and Trevor Lawrence with the Jaguars, college teammates, also champions. Notice a theme there: Alabama, LSU, and Clemson guys, quarterback and receiver, quarterback and running back. I know it's going to be much harder at the next level, but those guys all were so good together in college. Why not give it another chance? And speaking to all those guys, most of them minus, the Clemson guys, were SEC picks. The SEC setting a record with 65 players drafted in the draft, the most we've ever seen in an NFL draft, and also 10 of them being Alabama Crimson Tide picks. And I think 4 in the top 10, 5 of the top 15, all Alabama guys. And they showed the video where they would all give each other hugs as they get drafted. That's how good Alabama is. And the SEC is truly the conference of champions. I know Bill Walton might disagree, but that to me is what stood out.
Yeah, so we have those stories that stood out, but then there was one more that broke either the day of or the day before. It was Adam Schefter saying that Aaron Rodgers not happy in Green Bay. So, guys, what do you think? Do you think Rodgers will leave the Packers, Tom?
It's going to be difficult for him to do, given he's under contract for the next 3 years. So I'm inclined to say that he's either going to stay with the team, or if things get really extreme, he might just flat out retire, a la Brett Favre, his predecessor in Green Bay. He's won a Super Bowl. He's won MVPs. I think he's got the competitive drive to want to keep playing in the NFL. But if he's not happy in Green Bay, and if they're not willing to acquiesce to his demands to trade him, he hosted Jeopardy, did a pretty fine job with that. I'm sure that there's a pretty lucrative contract there. I'm sure ESPN would love to add him to the Monday Night Football booth. He's got options where he can make as much money as he's making now without getting hit all the time. So I think that it's either going to be that he stays in Green Bay simply because he's under contract, or he makes some sort of power move that way of trying to get out of the contract, making a trade, especially after the draft, especially after so many teams now feel like they've filled their need at quarterback. I mean, I don't know if there's a whole lot of options for him to go anyplace else at this point.
Yeah, I don't know. It's really interesting for me, this whole Aaron Rodgers situation. Real quickly, the Packers are the ones who kind of got themselves in the situation by drafting Jordan Love in the first round in last year's draft, the previous year. And also, at the same time, you got to think back to the NFC Championship game. Down 8 with just over 2 minutes to go, game on the line. 4th down, they kick the field goal. They try to get their defense on the field. They try to get Tom Brady and the Bucs out the field. Didn't work. So maybe Rodgers isn't happy with the confidence they showed in him, isn't happy with the fact that they drafted a first-round quarterback, and they continually, as Tom said, do not draft them first-round offensive skill position players, and when they do, they don't work out. And Mercedes Lewis, you mentioned him. I believe he's a Jaguars player, so he's not even a guy the Packers drafted. I think they got him in free agency or a trade. As far as what's going to happen, it could go any way. You might as well flip a coin in 3 as to whether he stays, whether he goes to do Jeopardy, which is his favorite game show, just like Tom Castleman's,
Hmm.
or whether he goes to another team. I do think that there is a legitimate chance that he goes to another team, just because we see this a little bit more in the NBA. But I think the players kind of run leagues these days. They have a lot to say, and if he says I'm not going to show up to training camp, the Packers might as well try and get something for him in return. So it's possible that he leaves. I mean, what do you think, Drew? I mean, we're just playing hypothetical, but this is really an absolutely crazy situation.
Yeah, I mean you gotta be watching it, monitoring it because the guy's a great quarterback. So I mean we'll see if he leaves, but where do you think he's gonna go? He's gotta be tired of playing in the cold, right, Common?
I don't know. He might be. I know he played college ball at California, much better weather. But he actually does really well in the cold. He's got some insane statistics as to how he plays in the cold. One that I think of again. This is just it probably is a long shot because I don't know that they would trade him in the same division. But I think it's kind of funny how Favre left the Packers and went to the Vikings and had a great career in Minnesota there for a while. I think if he can go to Minnesota and be paired with Alan Thielen and the rookie Jefferson, who was very good for them, he would be awesome with the Vikings. Then he could say a big like, "Oh hey Packers, you're not nice to me. Well, I'm going to go in the division and beat you down." And he knows the division. He certainly knows the teams and the familiarity. So that would be cool. I look at the 49ers, another team that I know they drafted a rookie QB, Trey Lance, at number 3. But if they can somehow pull a trade for Aaron Rodgers, San Francisco would be a great destination with George Kittle and a team that already beat the Packers 2 years ago and made the Super Bowl. That one is also intriguing. So I don't know. Those are just things off the top of my head. I certainly don't have any insider information. But no matter what he does, he's going to make himself some money, as Tom said.
Absolutely. I think in terms of places that he might end up going if this sort of thing were to happen, he's not going to be in the NFC Central, that's for sure, or the NFC North. Wow, I'm going back to like early 2000s on that one.
The Bucs used to be in that division.
Exactly. Yeah, he's not going to be in the NFC North. I think the Packers are going to try their hardest not to trade him in the NFC. Period. I think AFC West actually has a couple intriguing destinations. I think Denver was a team that was rumored to be able to bring him into their young receiving core. And how combustible would this be if he ended up in Las Vegas with John Gruden? That would just be like the ultimate. It would look weird to see him in the silver and black, but that a couple intriguing destinations there.
And Denver, while I think they added Teddy Bridgewater, is that right? I think they got Bridgewater, but
yeah, but that should not stop them from getting him.
That's what I'm saying, though. They didn't draft the quarterback in the draft. They had a chance to draft one, They had a chance to move up, or even draft one at the position that they had. And I know they got Mizzou's Drew Lock over there, but Drew Lock hasn't exactly worked out in Denver. I know they've got Jerry Jeudy and some really good, talented receivers. Actually, I might have to amend my pick and go with Denver as a very likely destination for Mr. Rodgers. I mean, get him out of the division, fine by me as a Bears fan. And all of a sudden, you look at this division. I mean, Matthew Stafford just left, and I mean, Kirk Cousins is a good quarterback, but I mean, if things go as well as they could for Justin Fields, you can make a case for maybe not right away, but in the next couple of years, him all of a sudden being the best quarterback in the division. How's that for Bears fans? Sounds good to me.
It's not a phrase I've ever heard or really even contemplated before.
Yeah. Knock on wood.
Well, we go from the gridiron to the association, and LeBron James back from injury. He said he struggled to get back from this one and that he won't ever be 100% again. Common, do we believe him? Is this just talk?
Hard to say. I could go either way. I lean towards it being a little bit more talk. I mean, look at him in his first 2 games back. He hasn't taken as many shots, and he's played a few less minutes, but he's shooting over 50% from the floor. He's still getting around 7-6 rebounds, assists a game. Again, a little bit less points because he hasn't shot the ball as much. But here's the thing about LeBron James. He may not be quite the same, not only because of this injury, also because Father Time eventually catches up with you as Drew Brackett has said on this show, LeBron is not exactly a spring chicken, to steal his words there. But I tell you this, though, even if he's at 90%, he's still better than 95% of basketball players. Anthony Davis is back. I think the Lakers are going to make the NBA Finals this season, and I'm greatly looking forward to that Nets-Lakers NBA Finals because that's going to be epic. I've changed my pick about 3 times this year in terms of who will win that one.
Well, I think for me, it kind of falls in line with a little bit more of excuse making to me. I think this is the sort of thing that you say when, if you think, maybe you don't have it anymore, you say that and you've got that built-in excuse. But maybe if you are able to get back to that 100%, all of a sudden, oh, look at this, overcoming the injury, the mystique of it all. Like, I think that's kind of what we're going for on this. I think LeBron James is more talk on this one. I mean, I think it's legitimate. It's not easy to come back from an injury, and he's been remarkably healthy and resilient throughout his career. But I think the only thing that he gains by saying this is a little bit of an out, a little bit of a cop out in the public eye so that people, if he doesn't bring another title to LA, if he doesn't win another title in his career, people can say like, oh, but look, he had that injury and, we can understand why he wasn't able to fulfill on the expectations that coming into the season, most of the association and people around the association thought the Lakers were a shoo-in to win it all. I don't know that that's necessarily the case anymore. They're going to have a tough road to hoe going forward. I think LeBron James might be padding it, might be soft pedaling a little bit of a lower finish than what a lot of people anticipated, which is the highest finish that there is out there.
Yeah, I think it does give him an out. So that's why he said it, and we'll see if he can get back, and the Lakers can get back on the train because right now they're in that 6th seed. They're actually basically tied for 5th. There's 5, 6, and 7th. They're all tied together. So that'll lead us to our next topic. I guess we're going to talk about the East first. That's such a great transition. All right, good. So with that 7 through 10 matchup in the West, guys. So right now, the Trailblazers are 7th, Grizzlies are 8th, Golden State Warriors 9th, and the Spurs are 10th. What team do you not want to see in the 7-10 matchups?
Right. So first off, by the way, I might, even though I'm a LeBron fan, I might agree with Tom's point in that he is a storyline guy, and he's kind of a guy who's sort of likes to kind of talk about the history of the game and take things into perspective. So maybe my guy LeBron James is coming up with an excuse. As far as the 7 to 10 range, by the way, if the Lakers, who I think are the 6 right now, if they happen to be in that 7 to 10 range, obviously they're the obvious answer. They're the defending champions. They're only in that slot because LeBron and Anthony Davis missed so many games due to injury. Also, Dennis Schroeder is going to miss some time now, I'm seeing. So they've got a brand new roster. Most of their guys from last year's team aren't back. So, I mean, what do you expect when you play in the tough Western Conference? Your top 2 players go down, and you're a new team. Yeah, you're going to struggle. But come playoff time, LeBron and Davis are going to be there. They'll be warmed up. So that's the easy answer if they slip. If they don't slip, it's tough because you look at either the Mavs or Blazers are probably 2 teams with the most talent with Luka Doncic. The Blazers have certainly had a lot of injuries, but I think they haven't really lived up to the expectations with that roster the last couple of years. Again, injuries are a big part of it, but I still think they should be doing better. So for me, I still look at the Warriors. I still look at Stephen Curry, the leading scorer in the league. Just such a great player. He can get hot any night he plays. And I look at Draymond Green, a guy who's been in the NBA Finals. Steve Kerr has been in the NBA Finals. So in a series, I don't think they have enough ability to have sustained success. But if you're talking about a play-in game, the Warriors are very dangerous in that scenario. And if you're talking about being one of those 1-2 seeds, facing a hot Stephen Curry, not a situation I would like to face.
Yeah, I mean, I got to go with my ride or die adopted home team here with the Portland Trail Blazers as a dangerous team. I mean, we saw it in the bubble last season, Dame Lillard, he is renowned for Dame time, how he plays in the clutch. That's something that I don't think any team wants to go up against. I think that they're in kind of a similar position to the Golden State Warriors, just Damian Lillard has a bit better of a supporting cast than Stephen Curry does. There was a game that for other reasons we were watching pretty closely last week with the Warriors and the Mavericks, and I believe the Warriors only put up was like 29 points and a half or something like that. Basically, it's Stephen Curry, and if everybody else doesn't show up, that team is cooked. It's kind of difficult for just one player to carry a team like that, especially when the second best player on the team, Draymond Green, isn't really a scorer. He facilitates a lot of other things, defense, rebounding, passing, but he's not going to go out there and put up points the way Klay Thompson could. So that's why I think I kind of like the Blazers as probably the most dangerous team in that 7 to 10 range. Of course, like you said, common Lakers if they fall in there. The Dallas Mavericks with Luka Doncic, they're in the fifth spot, but like Drew mentioned, those three teams are tied: the Mavs, the Lakers, and the Blazers. Currently, Blazers are in that 7th seed, though, so they're the most dangerous team for the purposes of this conversation.
Yeah, I mean, you can't go wrong with Portland. You got to go with your adopted team, Portland. I've got to go with my superstar, Stephen Curry. So maybe we're a little bit biased. We're both going very homer this show because, we're happy about the Bears, and you're happy about the Blazers, and I'm happy about the Warriors. And guess what? I'll have more homer and locks of the week. Drew, I don't know if you have an NBA team these days. What's your thought on this 7-10 range? What's your NBA team? I don't even know. Nuggets.
Well, yeah. I mean, I don't really. It's I don't really have a team. I guess the Clippers because you hate them so much. But
I'll second that motion.
But I'm going to go with the Trailblazers as the most dangerous. As you mentioned, all the reasons, Dame time, and if I'm in the playing game, would not want to face them at all. But moving to the Eastern Conference, guys, who do you not want to face in the East out of that play-in? The Celtics are 7th, Charlotte Hornets 8th, Pacers 9th, and then the Wizards are in 10th.
Yeah, the East is very interesting. I mean, I think it's so close here because you take a look at the Heat also are just outside there. The team that made the finals last season are hanging on to the 6th. You look at Boston. They haven't figured it out all year, and they're a scary team to me. That's probably the answer because you look at Jason Tatum, you look at Jaylen Brown, they've got 2 elite scorers, and if Kemba Walker puts it together and they get any help from their role players, they're a dangerous team. I do think, I'll say it, Bradley Beal and the guy I don't like, Russell Westbrook, all of a sudden are on a tear. They're a dangerous team too, and the Hornets, by the way, LaMelo Ball is back, and he's playing very well. So any host of those teams are very dangerous. I do think Heat are going to hang on to the 6th seed. So I think the Celtics as the 7 would be my pick. And I do think it's possible if the Sixers get the 2 seed. I would pick Philly, but I would not be surprised if Boston gets a 2-7 upset against the Sixers in the second round. Or first round, rather. Second round for them.
Yeah, I don't know. Is it okay if I don't have an answer on this one? Because, to be determined on the Boston Celtics. Last I checked, Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown are day-to-day after they had a collision in the fourth quarter against the Blazers. So I don't know if we're still waiting on medical updates from them. I haven't seen anything recently from that, but neither player looking particularly stable as they walked off the floor shakily or had to be helped off the floor. I think Jaylen Brown had to be helped off the floor. So that could be the sort of thing where, I would initially say, yeah, Boston Celtics all the way, but until we know more on the medicals, I'm looking at the rest of this Eastern Conference 7 to 10. It's a whole lot of meh for me. I mean, nobody's got a winning record from 8 to 10. I mean, in terms of, what's the team I don't want to face? It's more of a team, what team don't I want to face at this point? I mean, it's just not a lot of good in the Eastern Conference. I don't even know if I want to dignify any of these teams with an answer.
Wow.
Spoken like a Castleman.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to pick the Hornets because they were my preseason team that didn't make the playoffs, but I thought they would make the playoffs. So I'm all in on the Hornets.
All in on LaMelo Ball. a
Sure.
guy that I questioned, and he has played like Rookie of the Year. The only way he doesn't win Rookie of the Year is because he missed too many games. And by the way, they have pretty much said that it would be a season-ending injury for him, but he all of a sudden has come back a little bit sooner than expected. By the way, do you guys like this 7-10 play-in game type scenario? Because I know LeBron James isn't very happy about it, but neither is Luka Doncic. But those are guys that, obviously their teams could possibly play in those games. Because I personally love it. I think it's exciting. It kind of gives you a March Madness feel for just a little bit. It's similar to what baseball does now with the wild card where they play one game. And here's the thing. If you're a team that's in that 7-10 range, guess what? You had all season long to get in the top 6. So you've got no one to blame but yourself.
See, for me, I go the opposite direction, especially in the NBA. Already more than half the teams make the playoffs to begin with. I mean, like I just said with the Eastern Conference, at this point, we're going with what? 3 teams that have losing records have a shot to try to get into the playoffs. At a certain point, we're just extending the competition just because it keeps more eyes on the product. So from a fiscal perspective, yeah, it makes all the sense in the world for the league. I'm not a huge fan of it, though. If anything, I wouldn't mind seeing the playoffs contract a little bit, where maybe 7 and 8, we just move that play-in structure up where the top 4 teams are guaranteed in, and then we have a play-in tournament for the last 4 spots. Something along those lines if you want to keep some intrigue, but make sure it's with actually good teams. I think trying to pander to, making it where, 3/4 of the league have a shot at making it into the playoffs, I think that's starting to get a little bit ridiculous. Why not just make it every team now has a chance to play in for something for the playoffs?
For the record, Tom, I like your advised approach. I don't know that it would ever happen, but I do like the idea of the top 4 teams getting in the playoffs, and maybe the other 4, seeded 5 through 8, play like a 1 game or best 2 out of 3 scenario. I do think the NBA does get too many teams in the playoffs, but if we're going to go with the current format of 16 teams making the playoffs as is, which is probably something they won't change, I do like them playing a little extra exciting game. And I do think it helps in the sense that maybe I'm overthinking this, but maybe a few teams are a little bit less likely to tank if they get in the playoffs and get that revenue up. But it's interesting. We'll see what happens with it, but I'll definitely have my eyes tuned in.
Well, why not for teams that don't make the playoffs have a separate tournament for draft position then? I mean, that solves 2 birds with 1 stone, to mix my metaphors horribly there.
You definitely would be metaphoring your way on this show. I think they almost did that last year. I think they almost had a separate bubble for the bad teams, I think they were talking about doing, but they never did, which is probably good for Bulls fans like us and didn't have to watch more Bulls basketball.
Yeah, we were done with that. We didn't need that anymore.
We didn't need that. So anything else you want to add to this, Drew Brackett? Any insights as far as what you think?
No, I love it. I love the play-in. I'll actually watch those games, so looking forward to it.
Well,
my first NBA games I've watched the whole season.
If we got Drew Brackett on board, then let's go with it. Good job, Adam Silver. Nicely done. Speaking to Drew Brackett, moving on to Locks of the Week. Should we call him Drew Brackett? 2-1 week. I was about to say 3-0, but you were 3-0 last week. You were 2-1 this week. I was 2-1, and Tom Castleman, Mr. Last Place, is all of a sudden coming back with a 3-0 week. So our show, all of a sudden, getting some credibility with our Locks of the Week. Tom Castleman went with an all NFL draft card, under 6.5 offensive linemen in the first round. There was 5, I believe, and he had 12.5 SEC players under 12.5. There was 12 drafted, so he was really sweating bullets there in the 31st, 32nd pick. And he had the Vikings picking an offensive lineman. They traded down, but did take an offensive lineman with their first-round pick. Drew Brackett, 2-1. Speaking to offensive linemen, he missed Lander Dickerson out of Alabama getting drafted in the first round. And, of course, got his soccer over-unders. He had 2 games that were 2.5 goals under Crystal Palace Man City. It was 2-0. and Brighton Leeds United 2-0 also, just barely getting those. I was 2-1. I had the T-Wolves -2 over the Rockets in a dreadful NBA game, and they won by 7. Warriors, Mavs over 222.5. We had 233 total. Mavs winning 130-103. And then I had Stephen Curry over 5.5 threes. Guess what? He had 5 after 3 quarters, just needed one more, sat the entire fourth quarter because they were down like 30 points in what was a crazy NBA game. So what do we have this week, starting with Mr. Soccer Under, Drew Brackett?
Well, you said we're starting to develop some credibility with these, so let's go ahead and lose it all. We're going to go with the English Championship tomorrow afternoon, Luton Town versus Rotherham United, maybe, under 2.5 goals in that contest. And then we're going to go deep into the well tomorrow morning. Serie B, that's the Italian leagues, I think second or third league, I don't even know. Serie B?
Yeah, I think it's Serie A.
Okay, Serie B league.
That would be Serie B. You might be right.
Serie B. Yeah, it's going to be Cittadella versus Virtus Entella. Yeah, so Cittadella versus Virtus Entella. That'll be under 2.5 goals in that contest. And then we're going to go to the Copa Libertadores League. I believe that's in South America.
It is. Copa Libertadores.
There you go. We're going to go at Atletico MG versus Cerro Porteño under 2.5 goals. Good luck finding the scores.
I'll have a fun time looking for those scores. Drew Brackett, you're just throwing darts at this point. Just throwing those darts.
And that's what I've been doing. Yeah.
Dart
and
throwing.
It's working. So,
it's working.
Soccer, they don't score. So let's go to these, low leagues who, they'll have a few fans. And, these guys are like, we don't want to play offense. So just be a round of kickball then.
Wow. Well, it has worked. You can't question the picks because it's worked.
No. At least I didn't go to the Greek league. I thought about it, but I really couldn't pronounce any team's name.
You
so
should have gone with the Bulgarian Soccer League. You're talking to a Bulgarian here.
I can't even find that well.
You can find it.
Have they even dug that well?
Oh no, the well is dug.
Well, I wanted to go Bulgarian third league, not just their Premier League.
There is just an absolutely crazy amount of things you can bet on in this world. So where there's a will, there's a way. You can certainly find it. But we'll go to Mr. Castleman for some more traditional picks. I'd say Castleman is definitely the traditional picker of the group.
Yeah, so for this one, we're going for an all-today card Monday, May 3rd. So we'll start with the NBA. We'll go Ben Simmons for the Philadelphia 76ers over 23.5 points, rebounds, and assists. I think his number is 28.8 if you add those all up on the season. I'm guessing odds makers might be thinking that he's not going to be playing as much against a dreadful Chicago Bulls team that is banged up and just has been sliding out of playoff contention. But I think, if they're going to give me 5 points, rebounds, assists for him to try to pick up on his averages, I think I'll take those easily. So over 23.5 points, rebounds, and assists added up. Staying in the NBA, heard it from a little birdie somewhere, the Lakers to cover +5. I've heard that the Lakers maybe should be favored in this game against the Denver Nuggets tonight. So I'll take LeBron James, Anthony Davis, and the Lakers over the Denver Nuggets. And then moving over to the Diamond, Padres and Pirates. The number's too juiced to go for the Padres on the line, so I'll take them covering the 1.5 run spread at plus money, +115 last I checked. So got Ben Simmons over 23.5 PRA, Lakers covering 5, Padres covering 1.5.
Yeah, I'm going to stay with that same Sixers-Bulls game. You talked about it, Tom. The Bulls are pretty dreadful, and they're playing some pretty bad basketball. They've lost 3 straight. Meanwhile, the Sixers have won 4 straight. By the way, the last 6 meetings between these two teams, the Sixers have won all 6 of them, and all 6 by more than 6, which -6 is the line, 666. So take Philly to win by more than 7. And by the way, I know the Bulls have a new center now, but he's not that great at defense anyway. So I think Joel Embiid is a very tough matchup for the Bulls. Last I looked, he is going to play tonight. Last I looked, he scored 50 points earlier this season against the Bulls. Last I looked, the Sixers are trying to get the 1 seed in the Eastern Conference. Embiid is trying to cling to what is basically no hope, but some hope for the MVP award. So this is a big game for him. I did watch Bulls Sixers a few years ago at the United Center, and I remember Ben Simmons at the time had a career high 30-something points in that game. So I just don't think the Bulls draft or guard Embiid and Simmons very well. So Philly should cover easily in that game. I look at the Knicks +4 at the Grizzlies. Knicks won this season's earlier meeting by 4. Knicks are 9-1 in their last 10 games. Grizzlies only 5-5. I know the West is tougher, but New York actually 8 games over 500. Memphis only 1 game over 500. I actually think New York is the better team in this game. And home court doesn't mean as much in a COVID season, especially when it comes to the Grizzlies, who are just 14-17 at home, under 500 at home. So I like New York to cover the 4 points there, if not win outright. And finishing up for my all-homer show this week, since I was homering on the Bears, I'm going to homer on Barcelona soccer this weekend on Saturday. The line is just barely within our bounds, -132 on DraftKings, Barcelona money line. This game is a huge game because Atletico Madrid is winning La Liga. They're 2 points ahead of Barcelona and Real Madrid, who are tied for second place there. A must-win game for Barcelona at the Camp Nou, Barcelona's home field. Atletico Madrid, their last 14 games, 6 wins, 4 ties, and 4 losses. Really struggling. Barcelona at one point had won 19 games in a row. They lost the Clásico. They won another game, then they lost the game. But they've been playing very good soccer. It's going to be an ugly game. There might not be a lot of goals, but I think Barcelona pulls out a 1-0, 2-1, maybe 2-0 type win. I like them covering against Atletico Madrid and moving in the first place in La Liga.
Just to, what was the number on Philadelphia Bulls, by the way?
-6. Did it move? Did they announce?
It moved a lot, yeah.
What is it now?
7.5 on Bovada and DraftKings.
7.5 to the Sixers?
Yeah, do you still want that, or you want something different?
Oh, no, I'll take the 7.5. That's fine.
Okay.
I'm
inclined to agree with you. The Bulls are pretty dreadful right now.
I'm guessing that number moved because when I looked at it a couple hours ago, there was a little uncertainty as to whether Embiid will play. I'm guessing that
probably did it.
Is probably playing, so that bolted it up 1.5 points. I'll take the 7.5. I like the Sixers still.
Yeah, me too.
And I like a good week for the show. I mean, I don't know about Drew's picks, but certainly like my picks.
Drew doesn't know about Drew's picks.
Always like my picks. Come on now. I mean, you're gonna have to go deep in the internet to find this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I know. And the games are tomorrow, just so I have it written down. Tuesday.
I think so.
Okay.
Let me look at the English Championship's Tuesday afternoon. Serie B League is tomorrow morning, and then who knows when the other game is. Probably tomorrow morning.
So tomorrow's the big Champions League game between Man City and PSG, but we'll also be monitoring.
You won't be watching that one.
No, we'll be too busy focusing on the second division in Italy and who knows what else you said. England, I think, championship.
Yeah, the English championship. Yeah, Luton Town and Rotherham United.
I think this is the second time you've bet on Luton Town this year, and I think you were right last time, so we'll see.
Guess we'll find out. Who knows? Just look appetizing.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Salutes and statements of the week. I've got a salute this week, by the way, but Drew Brackett probably has the same salute, so I'll let him steal it from me.
Maybe, yeah. I mean, my salute and statement, it's only a salute, though. It's get well soon, Luis Robert. It will be out 12 to 16 weeks, recovering from a hip flexor, and he injured himself on the bases in the first inning on Sunday, and it's just tough. I mean, he's just such a good young player. He was hitting 316, already had 8 RBIs and 4 stolen bases, so that's tough. And I know the White Sox fans over there are in mourning, but it'll be okay. They'll still be fine. Yes.
Yeah, they might be fine, but I think the World Series parade has been pushed back at least a year or two. So yeah,
I may want to
really
get your money
news.
back on that one.
Yeah, and I'll have to take out the deposit on that route to Grant Park.
Yes.
For my salute, this is something I actually missed last week. Common's really going to enjoy this, but a salute to Russell Westbrook breaking Wilt Chamberlain, an all-time great number of triple doubles in a month, 12 for Russell Westbrook, moving up in the record books there. Also joining Oscar Robertson as I believe the only players to have 200 rebounds and 200 assists in a month. So a really great month for Russell Westbrook. This is a great time for the Washington Wizards as they're moving into the 10th spot for that play-in series. So a salute to Russell Westbrook. Also, really quickly, salute to all mothers for Mother's Day. That's coming up this upcoming Sunday. So just across the board from the Salute Your Sports show, happy Mother's Day to all the moms out there who like to watch, all maybe 3 or 4 of them.
Yeah, absolutely. I got to completely agree with the Mother's Day shout out from Tom Castleman. Get yourself some good Mother's Day flowers. There's a local shop here in Naperville that has just fantastic flowers, and I'm becoming a sort of regular there lately. So looking forward to getting those flowers there. And yeah, I mean, I'm not the biggest fan of your Westbrook statement. I'm guessing his field goal percentage probably about 40%. His turnovers probably about 5 or 6 a game. But the guy puts up the triple doubles, so good for him. I'm surprised neither of you went with this. I thought Drew Brackett would give a salute to this. But my salute is to Bob Baffert, the horse owner, winning his record Kentucky Derby 7th, and his horse Medina Spirits had the 6th best betting odds favorite, 12 to 1. So 5 horses were picked ahead of him. Medina Spirit beating all those horses at 12 to 1. Pretty good odds if you bet on Medina Spirit to win the Kentucky Derby. As for my statement of the week, I'm going to continue a theme of this show. And we know we talked about it earlier, but it's just too awesome not to bring up again. Salute statement to the Bears. Good job. Hats off, Chicago. Get your Justin Fields apparel because the Bears have finally done it. They finally picked a good quarterback. This guy going number 11 overall when he was projected as the number 2 overall pick just a couple months ago. 385 passing yards against Clemson in the national semifinal. Had some beautiful passes, 65 yards in the air on the money, 6 touchdowns. A guy that, quite frankly, maybe his stock also slipped because his senior year wasn't as good as his junior year, or rather his junior and sophomore, because he had 22 TDs and 6 picks. But you know what? He had more yards, better completion percentage, and it's hard to match a 41 touchdown, 3 interception sophomore season. And I know we don't want to use excuses, but part of it had to be that Ohio State got a late start. They only played 5 games, didn't get a chance to get his rhythm. He may not get it right away in Chicago, but I think in 3 to 4 years, the Bears fans will be happy. And in about 15 to 20 years, he might just have all the passing records for Chicago. The Bears have never had a 4,000-yard passing quarterback in a single season. About half the teams have a 4,000-yard passer every year now with how the NFL is. Justin Fields will become the first 4,000-yard passer in Bears history. He will have the most touchdowns and the most yards in Bears history. I know that's not saying much, but I think he's going to be a great quarterback and the greatest Chicago Bears quarterback of all time. I will say this, though, Tom. I'm not ready to give him the gold jacket like Devontae Smith. I'm not handing out no Hall of Fame gold jacket, but I feel...
You mean Jay Cutler?
Yeah. I feel pretty safe that Jay Cutler's records are going to go down.
I mean, beggars can't be choosers at this point, so I'm all for that.
Absolutely. Drew, are you high on Justin Fields? I think you are.
Yeah, but Jay Cutler's my boy or a boy. He's great. I love Jay Cutler. I mean, I know he got into the TV show, the reality shows. What is it? Hanging with Jay Cutler or whatever it was. Keeping up with Jay. Who
Didn't
knows?
his wife divorce him? I think. I can't remember. I think that happened, though. I might be.
Sure. Kristen Cavallari. Sure.
Yep.
Or Calavari. Yeah.
Yeah.
What was the show called? Anybody watch it?
I didn't watch it, but it's called Very Cavallari.
Ah, there you go, Catherine.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think Justin Fields is going to have his own show. At least I hope not. But
right.
We'll see what happens, guys. A lot more to tune into. Salute Your Sports. Unfortunately, no more NFL draft, but we'll find things to talk about. NBA playoffs around the corner. We'll talk about all that and more. Have a great night, everyone.